So I was watching Opossum Bud yesterday. I was watching the video that he put out yesterday, and I know I've talked about Opossum Bud on this channel before. A little different content, right? Obviously a little bit more adult, but really, really good content. And a lot of stuff that I like about Opossum Bud is that he gets to the point. He says it like it is, and I really, really appreciate the authenticity behind all that. But he had a video that came out. I think it was called "Don't Take This for Granted," where he was talking about just a lot of really, really good points. And first of all, hats off to him. Hats off to all of our veterans, everybody who served, as we obviously had Veterans Day yesterday. We celebrated it, honored it on Friday as well. Huge shout out to all the veterans, not only in this community, but all over the place. But he was talking in this video about not really necessarily the market, but really Pokemon in general and the space that we're in right now and how great things are. And he brought up a lot of really good points about the playability side of things. He brought up some stuff about the market, how prices are really trending in the downward direction for a lot of different singles, making availability better, making collectability better. He talked about the 30th anniversary at some point, which obviously won't be at for a few years, but he talked about as the market and as the content space continues to evolve and get better, and how excited he is for the future. And as I started kind of reflecting on this video, and I really like to kind of listen to what a lot of people say. There's a lot of really good things going on in the Pokemon space right now, and I would really just like to kind of emphasize that. Like, the Pokemon from a playability standpoint right now is absolutely amazing. The amount of decks that are out there, the format is so versatile. It's so great. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen on a weekly basis. Yeah, there's a lot of decks that are really, really good, but we have had a whole lot of inconsistency when it comes to names at the top, decks at the top. I mean, you had people who came in, players who came in, that this was their first ever regional event a few weeks ago, about a month ago, the first ever regional event that they played in out in California, and those two of those players made it to the final table, the final two. And you're going against people who've been playing this game competitively for 10, 12, 15 years, and to go to your first ever regional event and make it all the way to the final table is absolutely astounding. And that just goes to show you how great Pokemon is and the space that we're in right now. And with Paradox Rift just coming out, there's so many great cards in that set which could really impact the meta even more. As we've got the Latin America International Championships. Guys, we have gone so far from streaming these events and from documenting these events from like 2015, 2016. I remember streaming, helping out stream some of these regional events, and Pokemon has an entire production crew now that does all of that for us, so we can kind of understand what's going on in the meta, learn the game. If you're not playing Pokemon, I highly recommend picking it up, looking at it, but from a market standpoint as well, there's just a lot of really cool things that are happening right now, involving a lot of singles, involving a lot of sealed product. Like, right now we're in a really good space. Unfortunately, the economy in general really isn't great. Obviously, we're in kind of peril almost, right? There's inflation is constantly on the rise. Money isn't necessarily lining up, and that's not what this video is necessarily about. But what I do want to talk about is some singles that I think are really, I mean, I'm going to leave it up to you. First of all, like, the information that I'm providing is literally just information. I'm not standing to gain anything from this information. I'm just giving you information that maybe you don't think to look up or don't have time to look up. Maybe you're on your way home from work or on your way to work, and this is just a topic that we're talking about, so that way you can know what's going on in the market. I'm not trying to gain anything or manipulate anything or do anything. I'm just trying to give information, and I find this stuff to be interesting. So I started thinking about Sword and Shield singles, and for a long time, Sword and Shield singles really kind of hover around alternate arts, and that's something that we've talked about on this channel and really at length on a lot of different content spaces, a lot of different content channels. Alternate arts being kind of the face of the Sword and Shield era, and that's right. I mean, they really are. The alternate arts tell a story. They're fantastic. But I started thinking, okay, I wonder what the most expensive cards are throughout the entirety of the Sword and Shield block that aren't alternate arts, and how those are performing. So that's what we're going to take a look at in today's video. What I did is I went to TCG Player and I searched through every single Sword and Shield set. So we're not just talking about the main series sets, we're also talking about the half sets. We're also talking about Celebrations, we're talking about Shining Fates, we're talking about Champion's Path, all the singles that came out. What are the most expensive singles that are not alternate arts. And yeah, there's a lot of Charizards on this list. There's a lot of cards that might surprise you. But what surprised me is how cheap and how affordable some of these cards are, some of these chase cards are, how far they have fallen. And then I do have a question is, do you think we've hit the bottom on a lot of these cards? And it looks like, I mean, it's definitely something to consider, that if you don't have these cards in your collection currently, but they're pieces that you want to add to your collection, maybe now is the time to start looking at picking them up. So you can let me know in the comment section down below what you think, but I'm going to flip you guys around so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. We're going to start out with the highest price card that is not an alternate art through the entirety of Sword and Shield, and that is the Rainbow Rare Charizard VMAX from Champions Path. So it's going to be very interesting, actually, as we look through the top 15 cards from the Sword and Shield era that are not alternate arts. They get pretty cheap pretty quick, but Charizard VMAX is number one. This was the Rainbow Rare that was printed in Champions Path. You can see, for the most part, kind of trending in the upward direction through the end of 2022, all the way up until about the middle of 2023. You can see in November of 2022, it was hovering right around that $170 mark, and then continuing to rise until it passed the $200 mark in April, where it hit that one-year high of 201.16, but then really started kind of falling apart after that. And you can see at one point in time last month, it had dropped to a one-year low all the way down to 154.65. Now it has rebounded quite a bit. Now it's taken about $20 of that back, so it's sitting at 175.24, but it really starts making you think and look at where the price point is. The great thing about Pokemon, and this is one thing that I've kind of tried to emphasize in a lot of videos over the past couple of years, is that there is going to be a floor price for pretty much every Pokemon product, but there's not necessarily going to be a ceiling, because supply and demand is always going to shift. Demand is always going to be there in some regard. It may be higher, it may be lower, but supply is something that's always going to get impacted, especially on cards that are basically going to be out of print, out of circulation. A lot of people are going to forget about them. Collections are going to move on. They're going to stop collecting. You know, there's always going to be, and that's why you have issues, or that's why you have instances like base set cards being found, you know, in my parents' basement or something like that, where it's like, oh, I completely forgot about these. That's going to happen with some of these cards, you know, 15, 20 years down the road. But what is the low point that these cards are going to hit? Because that's really when you want to pull the trigger, because that's when it's going to be its most affordable, most cost effective for you to purchase it. So Charizard VMAX, the Rainbow Rare, hitting that 154.65 mark, now starting to rebound a little bit, sitting at 175.24. The next one that we're going to look at is also from Champions Path. This is the second most expensive card in the Sword and Shield block that's not an alternate art. This one was also, this is the full art shiny Charizard V. You can see kind of following a similar pattern as what we just saw with the Charizard VMAX from November of 2022 all the way up until April, May of 2023, really trending in that upward direction. Almost hit that $200 mark. You can see that 188.59. That was its one-year high, which it hit in April, May of 2023, before starting to fall backwards. In July of 2023, it dropped below 170, started climbing back up a little bit, and then fell to a one-year low just recently, which is where it's sitting right now. 163.80 is the lowest this has been for at least a year. I think it's actually the lowest this Charizard V has ever been at, but continuing to trend in that downward direction. And with Champions Path ETBs, booster packs being a little bit more expensive, and there's not a whole lot in Champions Path outside of these two cards that we just talked about, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people that are really cracking open Champions Path sealed packs in the future trying to pull these cards. So really makes you think about what the low point is for some of these cards. Here's the third most expensive card. This card is falling like crazy. It's absolutely insane. I was shocked when I looked at the price point on this one because I haven't looked at it for quite some time. But the Pikachu VMAX from Vivid Voltage, this is the Rainbow Rare right here. You can see relatively flat in November and then started climbing up in February of 2023. Hit that one-year high of 171.81 and then started to fall back down. So in April of 2023, it hit about 140 again, which is where it was up until February of 2023. Then it was relatively flat all the way up until August of 2023 before it fell down kind of the next ladder rung, like just kept going down. And now it's sitting at 108.69. So 108.38 is its one-year low. That's what it hit just a couple weeks ago. Now it's sitting at 108.69. So the lowest it's been in quite some time. Do you think we're going to see Rainbow Rare Pikachu that's below $100? I never thought that day would come, but it's definitely trending in that direction, which is very interesting. And then we've got the Charizard VMAX from Shining Fates. This one has been trending downward for quite some time, and part of that is just because there's so much Shining Fates out on the market. If you remember, Pokemon kind of released a statement after Shining Fates first came out saying, hey, we understand that a lot of people aren't able to get their hands on Shining Fates because it's being scalped, it's being sold for double, triple MSRP at a lot of different levels. We're going to make sure that we keep printing Shining Fates. You can still find Shining Fates in stores. You can still find them occasionally walking into Walmart or Target or other places because Shining Fates was just printed so much. And this card has been trending in the downward direction really since release. You can see in November of 2022, that's when it was at its one-year high of 107.26. For the most part, relatively level for about 6 months after that, but it was trending downward and then kind of took a bigger step down in May, June, July of 2023. You can see it fell below $85 and leveled off a little bit and then fell even further in September of 2023. At the beginning of October, it did fall to $68.40 as a one-year low. Now it has rebounded a little bit, sitting at $84.48, but still well below its one-year high, which it was at a year ago. The next card we're going to talk about is this Snorlax Gold card from Chilling Reign. I remember when this card was over $100, started trending in the upward direction. You can see at the end of last year, from November of 2022 up until February of 2023, it had passed that $85 mark. It was sitting at $88.32. That was its one-year high, but it's really been doing nothing but falling ever since then. And this is an interesting caveat outlier because the Snorlax Gold card is really the only gold card from the entirety of the Sword and Shield block that is performing pretty well. Every other gold card doesn't perform very well at all. I think we only have one more on the list, so it's very interesting to see how well this card was performing, but I don't know if that necessarily means that we've reached the bottom on this one or not. You can see it was trending downward pretty much all of 2023. It hit $66.35 at the beginning of October. Now it's sitting at $67.50, so just really barely above its one-year low, but continuing to trend in the downward direction. The Charizard V-Star Rainbow Rare, this is the first Rainbow Rare Charizard that we're going to look at on this list from Brilliant Stars. The second Rainbow Rare in general is already priced at $53, so that just goes to show you the power of the alternate arts and how strong of performers those were. But this Charizard V-Star Rainbow Rare has been going down and down. I remember thinking it was priced, it was cheap at $70. It just keeps falling downwards. You can see in November of 2022, it had risen a little bit to that one-year high of $86.96, but then really hasn't performed well at all ever since then. You can see a little bit of a blip in April of 2023 where it got close to that $80 mark again and then just kind of fell backwards again. And part of that is due to the reprints that Brilliant Stars has seen, but also part of it has just been due to demand. Like Charizard V-Star, the Rainbow Rare, obviously not as popular of a card as what one might have thought, as what maybe Pokemon may have thought. You can see it's been relatively flat now over the past couple of months. It hit $51.63 at the beginning of September. It's sitting at $53.44 currently, still way below where it was last year at this time. Marnie, you do have a few full art trainers on this list, a couple of them that are very interesting. You can kind of see where the market corrected itself, where maybe there was an outlying situation that was going on where it did explode in price for virtually no reason. Marnie is one of those examples that kind of saw this giant growth pattern despite the fact that it had rotated out of standard play. So that means it was more focused on from a collectability standpoint, was probably bought out at some point and then impacted greatly since then. So you can see relatively flat from November all the way up until April. Its low point to $45.73 was actually hit in November of 2022, but then you had this unexpected surge in April of 2023 where it peaked in July of 2023, hitting that one-year high of 81.05, and then the bottom just fell out immediately afterwards. So hopefully nobody bought it at $81.05 because that definitely fell apart. You can see in October of 2023 it hit that $47 mark. Again, it's sitting at $47.03 currently, so basically at its one-year low point right now, despite the fact that it had that obviously it was a buyout situation that was going on at one point. Starmie V, this is the first Trainer Gallery card that we're looking at. Trainer Gallery cards are very, very interesting. Pull rate's not super easy for the back half of Trainer Gallery, so a lot of the ones that are have are more in demand are very interesting to look at, especially as we move forward in the future of Pokemon. But you can see Starmie V for the most part trending relatively flat from November of 2022 all the way up until April of 2023. It did hit that 1 year low in April of $31.14 before really starting to rise and saw a really big growth spurt basically from August until September. In September of 2023, it hit that 1 year high of $55.86, but then wasn't able to stabilize, and it did fall apart back down to $37.67, so much closer to its 1 year low than its 1 year high, but still very interesting to think about how these trainer gallery cards will impact the future, especially because those trainer gallery sets, Brilliant Stars, Astral Radiance, Lost Origin, and Silver Tempest, I think are going to be a lot of fun to open for years to come. This is Boss's Order, so this is another full art trainer that we're going to look at. This one actually performing very, very well and did stabilize after it hit that 1 year high. So in November of 2022, this was sitting at $23.59, really started trending upward very quickly. In April of 2023, it hit that $42.29 1 year high, and then unlike some of these other full art trainers that we looked at, the bottom did not fall out of this one. It did start trending downward a little bit. You can see in September of 2023 it was at about $35 or so, but then it gained a little bit back, sitting at $36.73. So for the most part over the last 6 months or so, it's been relatively stable. Here's another trainer gallery card from Lost Origin. This is the Pikachu VMAX or the Gigantamax Pikachu VMAX in November of 2022. You can see it's starting to trend in the upward direction all the way up until April of 2023. That's where it hit that 1 year high of $56.27, but it fell apart very, very quickly in April of 2023. Hit that $40 mark, was relatively flat for the next 3 or 4 months until September of 2023, where it fell down again, hit that $33.43 1 year low. It's gained a little bit back, but it's still sitting at $35.43. Then we've got Sonia. This is from Rebel Clash. This one also, like Marnie, saw kind of a buyout situation where it was relatively flat all the way up until June of 2023 and then spiked. You can see that 1 year low happening in April of 2023 where it hit $23.54, and then all of a sudden in July it had jumped up to $55.83, so over doubling in price over the span of 1 or 2 months, but then it didn't stick. So it fell backwards, and you can see dropping below $40, dropping close to that $30 mark in September of 2023, and then falling back even a little bit further, where it was almost sub 30 at the beginning of October 2023. So it has stabilized a little bit now, but didn't justify that giant price increase that we saw in July of 2023. So sitting at $33.94 currently. The Snorlax VMAX is the third rainbow rare that we're going to look at. This one I didn't realize was quite as expensive as it is, but Snorlax VMAX, this is a beautiful looking card. Obviously the full art Snorlax VMAX, really cool from Sword and Shield. In November of 2022, this was sitting at a 1 year low of $26.28. Not a whole lot of dollar movement that has happened over the past year, so it has been relatively consistent and a little choppy. You can see it going up and down, up and down. In April of 2023, it did hit that 1 year high of $31.42 before falling roughly 10% very quickly. You can see in June of 2023 dropped down to about $28, but then rebounded right away in July and got right back up to that $32 mark before falling back again. Now it's sitting at $29.52, but for the most part been relatively stable over the past year. The next rainbow rare that we're looking at is the Mew VMAX from Fusion Strike. This one has lost quite a bit over the last few months. In November of 2022, it was right around that $35 mark, started trending in the upward direction, and then at the beginning of April, it even hit that 1 year high of $39.78 before starting to really just kind of head downwards. You see a couple of blips in there where it did try and stabilize and try and increase a little bit, but the demand wasn't there, and it just kind of fell apart. And all of a sudden in October of 2023, it was sitting at a 1 year low of $26.89. It's gained a little bit back, sitting at $28.84 currently, but still the lowest price point that it's been at over the past year. The next one that we're going to look at is also named Mew, but this is the gold one from the Celebrations collection. In November of 2022, again started trending upwards a little bit, like what we see from a lot of other areas in the market. February of 2023, it did hit that 1 year high of $39.99, but it's lost a lot since then. You can see really trending in the downward direction all the way until October of 2023, where it hit that $22.97 mark. Now it has come back a little bit, so it's sitting at $28.31, still a little bit closer to that 1 year low than that 1 year high. I think this is the last one that we're going to look at, the Rayquaza VMAX. So this is another trainer gallery card. This one, however, is from Silver Tempest. This one's a little bit interesting because we did have those God tins that ended up having basically a Silver Tempest hit in every single pack. And there's been a lot of those open. So I do think a lot more Silver Tempest hits have hit the market, which are impacting things, especially that alternate art Lugia price. But the Rayquaza VMAX was trending in the upward direction a little bit at the end of 2022. You can see it hit $49.27 at the beginning of 2023. That was its 1 year high, but then it's almost lost half of its value. Looked like it was going to rebound a little bit in September of 2023, but then just ended up falling apart altogether. It hit $26.96. That's where it's currently sitting, so that's a 1 year low for that Rayquaza VMAX. And it'll be, I mean, that's the 15th most expensive card in the Sword and Shield block that is not an alternate art. So if you're a master set collector, if you're somebody who's looking at collecting a lot of Sword and Shield Pokemon, I would really focus on the cards that are not alternate arts right now, because some of them are getting relatively cheap, and it really kind of begs the question of, have these bled enough now where they've kind of reached the bottom, and what's going to happen in the future as these print runs start to kind of exit and we focus more on Scarlet and Violet. Pokemon focuses only on Scarlet and Violet in collector's tins and things like that, and maybe some of these packs that we had in the Sword and Shield start gaining a little bit of momentum. It'll be very interesting to look at as we move forward. You can let me know in the comment section down below what your opinion is. I really hope you guys like the content. If you do, please hit that subscribe button down below, leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a long way for the algorithm. But most importantly, thank you so much just for being here, just for listening. I really appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you again in a couple days. Until next time, peace.